Welcome back, everyone, to not only an episode of The Damage Report, but I think I can safely say that it's the day with the best news. Not for most of it, but just for one little section, a bright shining star of a news piece to talk about. And I am very thrilled that joining me on this happy day is Jayar Jackson.
You guys are gonna find out soon what John is teasing, because it's a very happy day for John Iderola. I'm sure you're
talking about the casting of the Catwoman role. Yes,
absolutely. Small aside, it's almost Halloween, everyone, and we've had Halloween candy in the studio for a week or two now. The only thing that's worse than a Kit Kat bar is a Three Musketeers bar. They're both devastatingly bad. They taste like garbage.
What's
As a matter of fact,
wrong
when I walk back out and I see them, I'm gonna throw them all into the garbage.
You are smearing upstanding candy, and delicious candy, by the way. The Milky Way is light and smooth and lower in calories than these other
I like
bars.
the Milky Way. The Three Musketeer is worse. The only thing that's worse than a Kit Kat is a Three Musketeers.
Three Musketeers, fine. It's just like a lighter Milky Way, honestly. And
no,
you don't like a Kit Kat? You are un-American.
Do you eat wafer cookies by themselves?
Yes.
They taste like crap.
Okay, they don't, and I don't even know that we can say that. But anyway, they're good candy.
Well,
they're good candy, Brant.
Wafer cookies taste like crap? I can't say that?
No, we're sponsored by Wafer Inc. Anyway, I was gonna breeze through this intro because we got a packed intro, but that's gone out the door. So let's talk about
because
Skittles.
I just dropped a truth bomb in here.
Okay, well that's all the truth we have. We have one segment like Anderson Cooper. Anyway, look, we got a lot to talk about, and you'll find out by watching the show. So I'm gonna launch right into the first topic because there's just too much, okay? I've been eagerly anticipating one big endorsement, and that is AOC endorsing Bernie Sanders. I've been hoping this whole time. I initially predicted it like 6 months ago, like it's gonna happen. And it took a while, but it's happened. But not just that, it's not just AOC, other members of the squad coming out in support of Bernie Sanders all on the same week. So it's gonna happen formally on Saturday for AOC. Ocasio-Cortez will appear as a much hyped special guest at a Sanders rally in New York City on Saturday, sources in the campaign confirmed. After that news broke, Ilhan Omar announced her endorsement of Sanders, although she won't appear at the rally, and Rashida Tlaib will also back the campaign soon. So I know some people thought that the special guest might be Cardi B. No, this is almost as exciting. AOC will be announcing right like 20 miles or 20-minute drive from her own district with a sort of formal relaunch of Bernie's campaign. She's gonna be announcing her support of him.
I guess, are you surprised, I guess is the one question.
I didn't think that it was a guarantee that she was gonna do it by any means. I thought that she might choose not to endorse, or that hypothetically she could endorse someone else.
So number one, that. Number two, how much do you think it would help? Because I guess I'll give you the reason why I'm asking you all these questions. I feel like endorsements are an old school thing. I'm still totally fine with it. It's happening. I'm not against it in that term. I just wonder what it does for boosting candidates. What does it really do? People who support Bernie Sanders probably most likely already support AOC. It's like there's AOC people who are like, yeah, I was thinking twice about Bernie, but now since I'm all on board with AOC and then she's endorsing Bernie, now I'm on board with Bernie.
See,
I wonder what percentage of people do that.
I don't know for sure, and I don't have the numbers, but I think that might be our sort of bubble. And what I mean by that is, like, a lot of people will look at like, so there was the stat that most, or this is earlier in the race, most Biden supporters' second choice was Bernie, and most Bernie supporters' second choice was Biden. And people who pay attention to politics are like, what are you talking about? They're clearly not as close together as other candidates. But that's the thing, like some of the things that we're not swayed by, like in terms of experience, absent accomplishments, personal characteristics, things like that, where they come from in the country. These sorts of things do matter to a lot of people. And so I don't think that it's necessarily the most important specifically for swaying people who aren't already supporters of his. But I think that there's probably quite a few people who might not be paying attention to the Democratic primary, but like AOC. And certainly, while the endorsement itself, I don't think is gonna sway this thing, it's not the same as like an endorsement from a newspaper. Like AOC presumably is not gonna be like, I endorse him, see you next November. Like she's gonna be out there rallying for him, like speaking for him. That is gonna be big. She's gonna be going on MSNBC and Colbert talking about how great Bernie is, and not talking about how great the other candidates are. So that's important.
I guess it does galvanize the that part of his support. Like there could be people that are still trying to figure out between maybe him and Elizabeth Warren, or just as you said, him or Joe Biden. So I mean, it does give you that there's even from conservative folks, there is a characterization of folks from the squad that's like, there's this type of voter that's with him. And apparently it's not all straightforward and right down the line as far as those voters that also for Bernie Sanders. So I guess it does do something. Yeah. Especially with the fact that also Ilhan Omar, and as you said, Rashida Tlaib is gonna get on board.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. And so I wanna give Ilhan credit too. I've already said in another video that AOC, it's quite brave to endorse this early on, knowing that there's a chance that he might not win and you could like be on the outs with the person who ends up becoming president, hypothetically. But Ilhan Omar doing the same, and she released a video about why she's endorsing him. Here's a section of that video.
I am so proud to endorse Senator Bernie Sanders for president. Senator Bernie Sanders is the only candidate that has built a movement and continues to build a movement that transcends gender, ethnicity, religion, and we know that in order to take on Trump, we're going to need a unifier, someone who understands what the fight looks like, and someone who is ready to defeat him. I'm one of the people that was inspired by the movement that the senator has built. There was an America that I dreamed about. There's an America that most people believe in. It is an ideal. It's not reality yet. And he started the work of organizing for that America. And that has inspired me to get involved and run myself to help others also organize for that America.
And so that's super powerful. And what she talked about at the end, she shares with AOC and a lot of others that like, these are some people who might have gotten involved in politics, but they chose to following Bernie Sanders' example, and they will specifically cite that. And they're not the only ones. There were other candidates who unfortunately didn't make it through their primaries or didn't make it, into Congress. But there are some that will this time around. Like he didn't just do this to benefit himself. He inspired a lot of other people to come in and make their mark on American politics.
Yeah, and as we were mentioning, I think it was the other day you and I were talking. It helps with down the line candidates that are coming up. So as you said, there's different kinds of candidates that even become candidates because of the inspiration they get from previous people that ran for office, specifically in this case, Bernie Sanders. So then that does something to change the way we have representation, because I've always been frustrated by the thought that we'll elect this president and that's it. No, you gotta get people that are somewhat on the like-minded as far as progressing the country in office as well to continue to do this.
I agree. So that was the good side of the news, but let's have a brief little debate about the other side. So the announcement came out late last night that AOC, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib are gonna be endorsing Bernie Sanders. And generally a lot of people have greeted that as this is great news. These are really important rising stars with big followings. But some in the mainstream media communicated about it in ways that perhaps they wish they had not. Here's an example from late last night, John King on CNN.
It's an extension of what we see tonight, a debate about not only who is going to lead the party, but where is the party going to go? Which part of the party is going to lead the party into the 2020 election? They are more of the younger, fresher face, more aggressive, more liberal, less compromising. Less talk about working with Republicans. And one of the questions for Bernie Sanders has been in a very different race this time, can he find a lane to victory? There is no doubting his fundraising. There is no doubting the depth of his support across the country. But is it in the teens? Can he get into 20s? How do you win? That will certainly help him. But it will also, I think, Senator Klobuchar is coming in to join us now, have some of the other candidates say, wait a minute. Is this too far left? Is this too uncompromising? Is it too urban? Is it too internet? Does the Democratic Party need to find a broader audience? It is going to stoke the very debate we saw play out on the stage tonight.
So some people immediately took issue with him saying, is it too urban? Which I don't get, because that is not a loaded term at all in American politics. It doesn't mean a very particular thing when used to describe, in particular recently, women of color in politics. Yeah. What do you think?
He brings, he also in the middle, when he was going to that realm, Klobuchar was stepping up, as he said, to come join them. So she was the reminder in his head that this is the part of the party that may have a problem with this. I'm not saying that she's agreeing with his term of too urban, but what it is that's the establishment wing of the party. Are they gonna be upset that this is going to this youthful, radical, progressive wing of the party that's too urban? And he said, branch out further. So his thought, I'm gonna assume, because he can't read his mind, but from what it sounded like he said is, we're going down this avenue where we're focusing on minorities and folks that have always been outcasts from political discussion. And now that they're paying attention to them, I think the establishment might have a problem with that.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
Yeah. Look, he tweeted in response to criticism saying, please don't take a snippet and twist my words. I said they are leading new voices in the party, but also part of the debate we saw on stage tonight. Some candidates argue parts of the party are too liberal, too urban, was a policy point, nothing to do with color. Look, maybe, I don't doubt that John King didn't think that that was what he was saying, but that is how the term is used, it just is. And by the way, it is a nice little twist from, so first of all, we had the twist earlier in the campaign, 2016, Bernie's ideas are pie in the sky, they're way too radical. 2018, everybody has these ideas. Bernie, stop saying they're just your ideas. 2016, Bernie's support is just white bros. Bernie's support is too urban. Like, can he hit the middle road for like a day? Like, honestly, does it have to be sweltering heat and then like the depth of winter? Like, can you have a little middle ground for a bit there?
When you don't like someone's doing, you have to start characterizing the support and voting bloc that he's got. And maybe all those elements are there, that maybe some aren't the, I guess, the most desirable folks that sometimes may be around, or they may say things that may anger some other folks. But you can't paint a broad picture when you've got this many different elements of it.
Exactly, and most of what he said there, I think, was fine. He was complimentary towards Sanders and towards the squad in a number of different ways. Just don't use that term that way, especially to talk about a group of women of color.
And honestly, and he was characterizing what, again, the establishment Democrats think. I don't think that was coming from his opinion. He was saying other members of the party may think this, because he's probably heard them insinuate that.
Yeah, and really fast, just because I very rarely get a chance to somehow tie movies into politics. This whole use of the term, I saw it come up in an article because it came out yesterday that Zoe Kravitz is being cast to play Catwoman in the upcoming Batman movie because they reboot it every 6 months now. So there's gonna be another one. And so she had previously auditioned for a different Batman movie, and take a look at what they said to her. So in the last Batman movie, The Dark Knight Rises, this is from Zoe Kravitz. Back in 2015, they told me that I couldn't get an audition for a small role they were casting because they weren't, quote, going urban, she said. It was like, what does that have to do with anything? I have to play the role like, yo, what's up, Batman? What's going on with you? But we know exactly what they were saying. They were saying, kind of would prefer a white woman. That's what they meant. She got it at the time. The term has not changed in the last 4 years. That is how it is used. People think that it's subtle, I guess. It's not, people can see through it. Anyway, thank you so much. We're gonna take a little break. We're gonna regroup. I'm gonna eat a donut, and we'll be back with a guest after this.
We need to talk about a relatively new show called the Republic, or UNFTR. As a Young Turks fan, you already know that the government, the media, and corporations are constantly peddling lies that serve the interests of the rich and powerful. But now there's a podcast dedicated to unraveling those lies, debunking the conventional wisdom. In each episode of On the Republic, or UNFTR, the host delves into a different historical episode or topic that's generally misunderstood or purposely obfuscated by the so-called powers that be. Featuring in-depth research, razor-sharp commentary, and just the right amount of vulgarity, the UNFTR podcast takes a sledgehammer to what you thought you knew about some of the nation's most sacred historical cows. But don't just take my word for it. The New York Times described UNFTR as consistently compelling and educational, aiming to challenge conventional wisdom and upend the historical narratives that were taught in school. For as the great philosopher Yoda once put it, you must unlearn what you have learned. And that's true whether you're in Jedi training or you're uprooting and exposing all the propaganda and disinformation you've been fed over the course of your lifetime. So search for UNFTR in your podcast app today and get ready to get informed, angered, and entertained all at the same time.
Recently, I read an article on the appeal. It was an incredibly well-researched and well-written piece about the New York Police Department's investigations into rape accusations, and it raised a lot of really concerning details about the level of seriousness with which these sorts of accusations are pursued. We're gonna talk about it here. Now, I want you to bear in mind that obviously this is about rape and sexual assault, and so it's incredibly distressing material. If that is triggering to you, just bear in mind that that is what we're going to be discussing. But we're joined now by Meg O'Connor, the writer for The Appeal. Meg, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Very glad to have you on. Like I said, great report, and I'm excited to learn more about what is going on in New York. Why are they having so much difficulty, even in comparison to other areas, in investigating these sorts of cases?
Yeah, well, it's the New York and the NYPD's Special Victims Division has been kind of a mess for a while now. In March 2018, the city's Department of Investigation released a report showing that the NYPD is essentially just systemically understaffed, the Special Victims Division. So you have 67 detectives assigned to investigate something like 5,600 sex crimes. And that's just not enough time to, like, rape cases are complicated. And so you have detectives with way too many cases they could ever investigate. And they end up doing this like cruel moral calculus where they decide, well, the ones where I don't think I can actually get a conviction, I'm just not going to investigate. The ones where the victim is drunk or it's an acquaintance, those don't become a priority. And the NYPD has just resisted for a long time calls to actually assign more detectives of their like 40,000 people that work for the NYPD to the Special Victims Division.
That just strikes me as so bizarre because it's hard to come up with much more significant crimes than rape and sexual assault. It's the definition of a horrendous, violent crime. For them to not prioritize it, I mean, I would love to know what their resources are being put into. Obviously, they're not investigating Wall Street executives or anything like that. So it seems like a dereliction of duty to so casually put these cases aside. And I think I remember in your reporting, you talked about, particularly in Queens, I think it was, the unfounded rape report rate was significantly higher than even the other boroughs surrounding it. What can you tell me about that?
So I think Queens was something like maybe 14%. It was higher than the other ones. But yeah, when you have, and last year the data showed that the NYPD closed their nearly 2,000 reported rapes. They closed about 500 of them. So that's 1/4 as the victim allegedly no longer wanting to cooperate. So when you see a lot of unfounded rapes or you see a lot of rapes closed due to an alleged lack of participation from the victim, it should be a cause for concern as to the way that the NYPD is actually investigating those crimes, because it would be really unusual to have 1/4 of victims who come forward to report a crime in the first place then changing their mind. And it kind of speaks volumes to the way that the NYPD, that detectives are responding to the victims when they come forward. Like, what are they doing that is turning people off from the process, that is making people feel like they can't move forward with this or they aren't being believed?
Yeah. You know, and it's interesting because I can already predict how some right-wing commentators would respond to those numbers. They would say, "Look, it's what we've been saying. Women are making these things up." But you know, I myself and I think a lot of people recently watched the series Unbelievable on Netflix that sort of demonstrated how even a person who 100% went through this experience can be dissuaded from going forward when the people who are in a position to provide justice for you appear to have no interest in it. And so I'm also curious, you're describing New York numbers here. Do you have any knowledge about in other areas of the country? Is New York really an outlier? Is it generally the case that these sorts of crimes are taken seriously outside of New York?
No, it's definitely not the case that rape is taken very seriously anywhere it happened. It's usually the crime. Any crime could be unfounded. A robbery could be unfounded. An auto theft could be unfounded. But rape is by far the most common crime to have unfounded. And like by the FBI's definition, that would mean that it was false or baseless. So you do certainly see it's just kind of a culture of police departments not to take rape very seriously unless they're the kind of like Law and Order SVU type rapes where it's very violent or there's a stranger. But there are many cases even with those where the police just still don't want to put in the time and resources into this sort of crime.
Yeah, and I think unfortunately shows like SVU have led people to believe that that is what rape is like, when actually far more of them don't necessarily take place in alleys and those sorts of things. So based on your research, do you have any suggestions that you think changes that could be made, reforms that could be made that would help to fix this situation in New York or around the country?
It's a very difficult situation to improve because you're kind of leaving it in the hands of the police officers who are themselves kind of reluctant to take these kinds of crimes very seriously. Like I think one of the just most basic things that you could do to improve the situation is to actually staff special victims units appropriately. So, I was saying before that there was 67 detectives to investigate nearly 6,000 crimes, and the homicide squads had 101 detectives to investigate 282 homicides. So that gives you a sense of like how the department from the top down prioritizes crimes and where they think resources need to be directed. But it's really difficult. You need to hire investigators who actually have this sort of mindset where like they understand that most rapes are acquaintance rapes, and many people are raped by somebody they know, and there's alcohol involved, and there's tricky cases, and that the time and the understanding just needs to be there to actually take them seriously.
One final question. Do we have any idea of the gender breakdown of the investigators in the Special Victims Unit?
I'm not really sure about that actually, but from the photos that the NYPD is so fond of posting of their investigators, it seems like it's mostly men.
Okay, well, that's another thing that potentially they could look into. Meg O'Connor, thank you so much for joining us. Everybody watching this should definitely go to the Appeal and take a look at your article. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We're gonna take a short break here. When we come back, updates on impeachment and also the situation in Syria after this. Over the past few weeks, as more details have come out about Giuliani's involvement in the Ukraine scandal, I've predicted several times that were he to testify before Congress, he would probably just collapse like a flan in the cupboard. But anyway, he's apparently found a way around that. He's tapping out. He's just not gonna be involved in that entire thing. He put out a statement saying, "I will not participate in an illegitimate, unconstitutional, and baseless impeachment inquiry." John Sale, who is a lifelong friend, has represented me for the sole purpose of analyzing the request and responding. At this time, I do not need a lawyer. Look, there are a few people who are less on the side of Rudy Giuliani, but I do want to try to help him at least a little bit. You definitely need a lawyer. You should get a lawyer. It should not be you, and really not anyone that you're close with. Go to an outsider and get them to represent you because you're gonna need it. I tweeted at him, this isn't one of those things where like two keys need to be turned simultaneously. Like your involvement is going to happen whether you want it or not.
I don't know what the end game was supposed to be. He went on TV countless times. After the first time, I think people, whether they agreed with him or not, were like, Rudy, stop. Get off TV, calm down, relax somewhere. But he continued, but he had a lot of things to say when he's on TV. Now that someone wants him to come and say all those things under oath in an official setting, suddenly he doesn't want to talk. I wonder what the problem is. Maybe he's just spreading propaganda on TV and going to particular outlets to yell at people and talk about random conspiracy theories. That's the idea? What did you think was gonna happen?
Yeah, look, I think he's in a tough position where even if he wanted to, and I don't think he wants to, I think he probably has enough self-awareness to know that he would be horrible if he were put to those questions. I think he knows that Trump's strategy right now is to try to just stonewall. And so Giuliani kind of has to because of his attachment to Trump. Like if he were to go testify, that would be considered by Trump to be the ultimate in disloyalty. And there's nothing more important to Trump than loyalty. But Trump did put out a statement that I found to be interesting today, saying Republicans are totally deprived of their rights in this impeachment witch hunt. No lawyers, no questions, no transparency. Well, Trump, we wanted to get a lawyer, but he won't come in. We tried. And then the rest of that doesn't need to be read. So anyway, what's interesting though is this is not necessarily the end of it. Obviously, there could be a subpoena for Giuliani. He was asked by ABC News what would happen if they did decide to enforce a subpoena. Giuliani said, "We will see what happens." But again, I don't know what that means. Like you legally have to at that point. That's how the legal process works.
Normally, under normal circumstances, I would see that answer and say, they have a plan. They just don't want to tell us. They don't want to show their hand. He actually probably has no idea what he'll do. They asked him that question.
Well, he doesn't have a lawyer to advise him.
They probably asked him, and he went, I don't know. I'm going to have to see when that happens because I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm eating for breakfast today. He just goes through life and makes those decisions as he goes. There's no way this is the way he's always been.
Yeah.
There's no way. His brain is deteriorated to not realize that this is a normal process.
You only think that because you watch him being interviewed. He's not the only one though. In a statement released late Tuesday, Mike Pence, vice president, his office said it would only cooperate if Congress returned to the quote, regular order of legitimate legislative oversight requests. Until that time, the office of the vice president will continue to reserve all rights and privileges that may apply. And again, they just say what they want to be true. This is the normal order of things. I mean, impeachment is rare, but it is fully constitutional. It can be well-founded or poorly founded. Like no objective person looks at this and says there's no cause for alarm with Donald Trump. There's no justification for this.
I'm trying to figure this out. Like, what is it? No, I know I didn't read the whole statement from Pence's team, but I would hope they would elaborate on what is not the regular order of legitimate legislative oversight requests. What is it?
God only knows.
Tell us what is normal.
I don't know, but the problem is if you were to actually respond to that, you couldn't continually shift the goalposts. You got to be very vague about these sorts of things. But I would say, look, Giuliani not being involved, Pence not being involved, those are issues because this is a constitutional inquiry. I would say even more concerning though is that the Office of Management and Budget also said it has no plans to turn over documents that impeachment committees subpoenaed, according to Reuters. Russ Vought, the acting head, because acting heads serve in basically all functions in our government right now, told Fox News last week that the office will not be participating in a sham process designed to relitigate the last election. For the last time, it wasn't the last election. You guys got shellacked in the terms of Washington in the last election. It was 2 elections ago. It's not relitigating it. It's litigating the phone call, I suppose. But the OMB is not just like Donald Trump's friends or whatever. They serve a function in the US government. It's not up to them to declare a legitimate constitutional impeachment inquiry to be a sham. That's just the continual tribalization of the US government, I guess. Again, this is loyalty to the president above all else. That is not how our system is supposed to function. The president in the US is a powerful figure, more so than in other systems, some other systems of government. But he is not the king, he is not the emperor. He doesn't get to say to the OMB that you're tapping out on impeachment. That's not okay.
As far as relitigating the last election, which again, as you pointed out, was 2 elections ago, relitigating that, this is about a phone call where they're talking about Joe Biden. What does Joe Biden have to do with the 2016 election? What does he have to do with it? If we're relitigating the last election, why is Donald Trump talking about Joe Biden, and why is that the focus of what finally got this ball rolling? That's a simple question to ask. Now, I know that these are statements. That's why they put them in statements, so they don't have to have the possibility that someone might ask them a normal follow-up question like, so how does the Ukraine call have to do with last election? They can't answer the question because it doesn't make any sense. Just throw nonsense up against the wall.
To the extent that it does, it's because Trump asked about Hillary stuff in it. So they made it about the last election, not the people looking into it. Okay, with that, let's turn to another topic. We have limited time, but incredibly important. So we're gonna turn now to Syria and the Kurds. So, look, we know that Donald Trump's strategy change in throwing the Kurds to the wolves effectively has been poorly received on all sides. But it actually got worse today. Today, asked about the Kurds, Donald Trump said this. It's impossible that a president would say this, but he said he defended his decision to pull US troops from Syria, saying the Kurds are, quote, no angels. All American soldiers are away from the site. Syria and Turkey can fight. They've got a lot of sand over there. There's a lot of sand that they can play with. And Trump added that it was fine for Russia to assist Assad in the ongoing conflict. I mean, that's not just condescending and dismissive and amoral and arguably evil, but also weirdly racist. Like the sorts of people who focus on the sand of the region are a particular type of person generally.
Absolutely, we're not. We know where that's going, and then of course they'll openly deny and be like, "What? There is sand over there, right? What are you talking about?" But so fine, we'll move on from that. So how are the Kurds no angels? What did they do against you in assisting with the mission that we're trying to carry out over there? What is it that they did wrong? You can't just say words and not have anything else to say behind it. They're no angels. How? What did they do wrong? What is it they've done to deserve this? To deserve this mass slaughter? What is it? And why is it that you're okay with, as you point out at the end of that, it's fine for Russia to assist Assad's regime in ongoing conflict. Why? Why do you want that?
Yeah, why is that a good thing for anyone involved, let alone our allies, the Kurds? By the way, bear in mind, Kurdish forces sustained nearly 11,000 casualties in the fight against ISIS. And even members of our own armed forces say that the Kurds, more than anyone else, including our military, were instrumental in helping to defeat ISIS. Defeat them up until the present because they appear to be on they're about to make a comeback considering what we have chosen to do. But like, it's not just the betrayal, it's to then turn around. So he spent like 2 days saying, I'm not betraying them, has nothing to do with that. And now a few days later, he's insulting them. He's mocking them as they are massacred. Thousands have already been killed by Turkey, fighting forces and civilians alike. And now Donald Trump from the White House, a guy who did everything he could to dodge military service, is spitting in their faces. These are our allies who fought against horrible odds against some of the most despicable people in the world. Thousands died, yes, to protect their land, but also to help us not be under the threat of ISIS for the rest of our lives. And for him now to just insult them so callously, as many have pointed out, who would be stupid enough at this point to ever ally with the United States? Knowing that you will likely be cast off, that if money is owed to you, it'll never be paid, and then they'll insult you for your trouble.
So I'm gonna show this guy a picture of the murdered baby and also the maimed little girl, 7, 8 years old, who lost a leg because of this.
Yeah.
And asked them, what did this non-angel do?
Yeah.
What did this evil little kid do to deserve this? That you're saying, hey, they're no angels, F them.
Yeah.
So if that's the approach, there needs to be, like, if you're gonna be this much of a callous POS, then we need to go ahead and respond the same way. Every time he gets anything tough presented to him, he goes, well, you guys are so mean to me. Who are you? This isn't mean?
Yeah.
This isn't callous, this isn't murderous? You're okay with this?
Hashtag be best.
Show him the picture and say, where's the, so what did she do wrong? Give me the details, Donald.
And by the way, I mentioned this last fact just because we're blowing past all the assurances and promises that Donald Trump gave us after he announced this policy change, but Turkish forces are reportedly advancing on Kobani after President Trump said he got assurances from Erdogan that the Kurdish city would be off limits. Vice President Mike Pence said that Erdogan gave Trump a firm commitment that Turkey would not launch an offensive against the Kurdish-controlled city of Kobani. I'm not gonna read the quote in its entirety, but Lindsey Graham just announced he was just on a phone call with Erdogan, who promised them they'd never go into Kobani, and they're moving in to assault the city right now. So again, I don't know if it was just callous disregard that led to Trump allowing this, or if it was a bluff that he called that he shouldn't have. If that's the case, he's a moron, and he trusted someone who cannot be trusted, did not deserve any of our trust.
They're subhuman, that's the reason why it's okay. In their minds, they're not really humans, who cares if they die? That's the basis for when you have a hierarchy of humans in your brain, which is the problem with him originally. Once you do that, you can allow or do anything to certain people.
100%. And it's tragic to watch day by day. Okay, we're gonna take a short break. We come back, more to get to. In our ongoing coverage of the Fox News versus Trump war that's been going on for several months, we've given credit to Shep Smith, who has now transitioned out of the network, and Chris Wallace, even occasionally Steve Doocy, for acknowledging reality, even if it's inconvenient for the president. But it turns out that a little while back, Neil Cavuto had a pretty amazing takedown of the president that thankfully is being spread once again. So I wanna show you some sections and give a little bit of credit to Cavuto for this.
Who likes to be corrected? But you are the president. It comes with the job, just like checking what you say and do comes with my job. After all, I'm not the one who said tariffs are a wonderful thing. You are. Just like I'm not the one who said Mexico would pay for the wall. You did. Just like I'm not the one who claimed that Russia didn't meddle in the 2016 election. You did. Now, I'm sorry you don't like these facts being brought up, but they are not fake because I did. What would be fake is if I never did. If I ignored all the times you said you loved your old Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson, until you didn't. Had no plans to dump your Homeland Security Secretary until you did. Called Chinese President Xi Jinping an enemy just last week and a great leader this week. Sometimes you don't even wait that long. Last week, you expressed an appetite for background checks before arguing just hours later, our background checks are already strong. These aren't fake items, they're real items, and you really said them.
Okay, so it actually goes on for longer, but there's a limit to how long we can play videos for, honestly. So this is from a little bit ago. That's as critical as I've ever seen on Fox News.
It's because
that's as critical as I generally am.
Yeah, it was a part of the ongoing onslaught, not ongoing, but I guess partial onslaught that Trump has had for Fox News because there haven't been every voice hasn't been completely on board, as you mentioned. Shep Smith also gone. So I mean, that was like finally you eventually get fed up. And you have to say some truth that you've been holding your tongue about. It also illustrates many of these voices there, they know what's happening. They know it's ridiculous, and until they are forced to say it, they won't.
Yeah. The interesting thing is, I don't follow Cavuto, so I don't know if this is a thing that he occasionally does. I get the general idea that he's not effectively a Hannity or a Carlson in terms of white supremacy and stuff like that. But I'm sure he's plenty conservative. But honestly, while I probably don't respect a lot about his ideology, I do respect that, like, you can have someone from your party in power, but be incredibly frustrated with them. Like, how much even before I was part of TYT, how much was TYT attacked for being critical of Obama?
Yeah.
But that's the job. It's not to become cheerleaders for 4 years and then hyper-partisan attack dogs for 4 years. You're supposed to know what your principles are and hold to them regardless of who currently occupies the Oval Office.
There's so many levels of that, as you mentioned. So if you don't become the attack dog versus like a lapdog back and forth, then even there's factions within your own party, which happens with conservatives obviously as well too. If you do it, suddenly you're like a never Trumper. I can't believe it. You got derangement syndrome. So they do all these, they give you these labels of being not real versions of whatever affiliation in political circles you're supposed to be a part of. Why are we affected by that so much? Fine, call me a name, it's whatever, I'm telling you the truth.
Yeah, I wanna show just a little bit more from that Cavuto video.
Just like you never paid to silence a porn star until it turns out you did. Never ordered your former White House counsel Don McGahn to fire Bob Mueller until we learned you tried. Fake is when it's wrong, Mr. President, not when it's unpleasant. Just like it isn't and wasn't fake when you said the Access Hollywood tape wasn't real when it was, or that you inherited an oppression from Barack Obama when you didn't, or that you ripped quantitative easing when he was president, but are furious the Federal Reserve isn't doing the same for you now that you're president. Just because you're the leader of the free world doesn't entitle you to a free pass. Unfortunately, just a free press.
So what I love about that is not just that he was willing to stand against the president, but how much fun was Cavuto having during that segment? You could tell in each one of those, but you did. Like there's just that little bit of fun in the closer, which was a good closer. He obviously enjoyed that. And apparently looking back now, because like I said, I missed this when it first happened. He was attacked by the president and had to do a sort of follow-up because that's the sort of thing that does not get you respect from conservatives for sticking to your principles. It gets you called a shill or whatever.
It sucks, but you know what? Now, after you say all that, after you go through all of the back and forth about he's a liar, he's misled us on this one, he's given us this point on that one. After that, we need to come to the conclusion, therefore, what else is he screwing up because of his approach to life, which is to lie and then lie and then lie. The problem, I don't watch Cavuto every day, but when you stop at that point, then you're not doing the full service. You go through everything he's done that's horrible and then go, okay.
Yeah.
So what's the point? You just expose him for exactly how blatantly false everything he says is, and then you go back on as if this is a normal approach to life.
Yeah, well, we'll check with him. We'll see what he's doing more recently. Might get fired, we'll find out after that. But anyway, we're gonna take a short break. We come back, Fox and Friends actually interviewed some diner guests, because that's who you want. You only talk to people in diners, about the Democratic debate, and we'll find out what they thought after this. Fox and Friends views all of these Democratic primary contenders as some form of commie socialist. And so they want to obviously discount their ideas, make them look bad. So they go to diners after these debates and they talk to regular Americans to find out what they think about these crazy ideas of the Democrats. And it doesn't always go the way they want. Here is Pete Hegseth talking to someone in a diner.
You know, when she brought up that billionaires taxing them after about $50 million, 2 cents of every dollar that they've made after that, it's nothing to them, and it would help so many people here. I mean, we could build our infrastructure, the schools, colleges. We could do so much money with that. Most people would think 2 cents of every dollar. What is that? A drop in a bucket? But it's millions, billions of dollars. These 3% of the people that we have that own almost half of what we're worth in the United States is just deplorable.
Are you concerned that the effective tax rate, when you add together the wealth tax and increases in taxes for proposals by Bernie and Elizabeth Warren, can be as high as 90, even 97%? Are you concerned that wealthy people could just take their money somewhere else?
Well, it seems to me like, if I remember correctly, back in the 60s and 70s, that if you were a millionaire, your taxes were awfully high. And I think it was in that range of 50, 60, 70%, anything after that. Nobody about it then, and we still made lots of billionaires. So I don't think that that's going to hurt anything. I think once you get past a couple of $1 million, you got all the money you need. How about giving some of that to the people that work for a living that can't make it?
Oh, okay. That he seems to know what he's talking about there. Anyway, I like that diner. That's where true intellectuals go. No, I mean, like who watching that? I understand that the idea is to get the Fox News viewers to like hate the wealth tax or whatever, Bernie's version or Warren's version. But like what that guy said is gonna make sense to so many Fox viewers. Yeah, they have more money than they will ever spend. Why are we continuing to contort our tax policy to make sure that they can, buy new islands if they're ever created off the coast or something? Like, that, to a regular person who's not a millionaire, so not a Fox and Friends host, but a Fox and Friends viewer, that makes all the sense in the world.
The only thing my friend Phil in that clip missed, he does look like his name is Phil. The only thing my friend Phil missed in that was also in saying all this money with the rich have, they can afford to give it to the rest of us. That's the only, I guess, characterization or framing of it that I think would allow people to continue to think this is some kind of takeaway. This is the way things are supposed to work. So that money that they've hoarded is not just because they're these geniuses who found a way to put it together. They're these geniuses who found a way to buy off politicians to allow them to take our money and give it to them so they can hoard it. It's not like some kind of special skill that they have. So this is money that we've given them. That we've got no part of as we participate in this American dream. So when Pete Hegseth asks, what about that effective tax rate for the rich? Why do we give a damn what the effective tax rate is for the rich? They don't care about how much the effective tax rate is for poor folks and how much they actually spend out of pocket for everything that they pay for, from every kind of sales tax to income tax to anything else that they have to pay for. They don't care about us. Why don't people go to the rich people and say, hey, rich people, aren't you worried about the effective tax rate of people that are making $25,000 to $30,000 a year? They'd be like, why do I care about those plebes? Why do we care about them so much and we're giving them everything we've got? And it's not a takeaway from people that deserve it. It's participating in an American system and they're not doing it. We're the only ones that are doing it.
Okay, I liked what Phil said. I liked what you liked more. So the video is going to be titled "Jayar Jackson Destroys Diner Phil." But anyway, no, that's a great point, obviously. But considering that it was an impromptu response from someone who doesn't do political communication, I thought it was pretty on point.
It was great. I don't mean to knock down Phil.
But you're right. You're right. It could help to buttress that false view of what taxation actually is. So I wanted to give people just a little bit of details since the wealth tax is being brought up. If this is something you're interested in, you should look more into the plans. So far, this is not one of the concepts that everybody on that debate stage supports by any means. And in terms of plans, we have Bernie Sanders and we have Elizabeth Warren. So if we could go to one graphic, you're going to see that they both do wealth taxes, but they do it differently. Bernie Sanders is more granular and also has a much higher cap. So Elizabeth Warren's caps out at over $1 billion, you pay 3%. Which again leaves you a billionaire afterwards, so you're gonna be okay if you're a billionaire viewer of the damage report. With Bernie Sanders' tax proposal, over $10 billion, it's 8%, which affects virtually nobody. You could fit them in a Hardee's or something, the amount of people that would actually affect, and would again still leave them as billionaires, so they are going to be fine. But by doing this, we can reassert the sort of tax rates that the US had back when it was in the most sustained period of economic growth that our world has ever seen, and we produced all of these new millionaires. We just might have to cut down the number of billionaires slightly, which is a cost I, as a non-billionaire, am perfectly willing to pay. And it will be greatly to the benefit of millions and millions of Americans. Jayar, as always, thank you so much.
Sorry.
For coming on. Great to have you here.
It's all hot in here now. I've been yelling for the past several minutes.
It is pretty hot, but sometimes it should be. So look, we do have one more topic we're gonna talk about. So this is the end of the regular show, but if you're a member, you will be able to stick around for the overtime period. You can go to tyt.com/John to become a member. If not, thank you for watching and we'll see you tomorrow. If you are a member, then stick around. We're gonna have an overtime. We're gonna be talking about Harry Dunn and a truly awful development in that case that of course included Donald Trump. So we're gonna have that for you in just a little bit. We'll see you on the other side. I want to give you an update on the situation with Harry Dunn, a 19-year-old in the UK who was killed by the wife of an American diplomat. Now that is obviously a tragedy, but the pain for Harry's family did not end when Harry was taken from them. It actually got worse even today. So we want to start from the beginning if you don't know about this case and give you details about this. So Harry Dunn was driving his motorcycle near a Royal Air Force base in Northamptonshire, England, when US diplomat's wife Anne Sakulis pulled out of the base on the wrong side of the road, hitting Dunn, who later died of his injuries. If you don't know, they drive on the other side of the road. She's the wife of a diplomat stationed there. She had been there for several weeks, but apparently hadn't gotten down how they drive or had forgotten. In any event, was reckless enough that it cost someone their life. Now, when police went to the base the next day to tell Sakulis that Dunn had died because he died of his injuries at a hospital, she was understandably upset and assured them that she had no plans to leave the country. The police went back again about 2 weeks later to place her under formal questioning in a wrongful death inquiry, but she, her husband, and their 3 children had left the country, claiming diplomatic immunity. The US Embassy in London said they did so on the advice of the US State Department. So initially, she took full responsibility for it and said, you know what, I'm going to be here, I'm gonna see this thing through. Then she got lawyers and they fled to avoid any possible justice. We give our diplomats odd levels of immunity from any consequences whatsoever that apparently extends to their family as well. But you don't even get an inquiry when they flee from the country that they were there to work in.
Yeah, it's an illustration exactly how we approach things. And also she had the human response at first to be devastated and oh my God, I'm gonna assure you guys, I don't plan on running from this. But until professionals come in and tell you, no, you run from it. And then you act like you're just better than that kid that you killed, it's okay. And that's when then you go from that point. It's like insurance companies, the back of your insurance card says, if you're involved in an accident, do not admit fault. Because we're gonna be in there to make sure that there's no responsibility taken.
Yeah.
If you hurt someone, you kill someone, it's okay. Say you didn't mean to, or say you didn't do it, and then move right on.
So look, the death is a tragedy. Fleeing is horrible for the people who have lost a family member or a friend of theirs. But it actually got worse today. And to get worse for a situation this bad, you need the involvement of Donald Trump. And unfortunately, that's what they got today. So the Dunn family is in the United States to drum up support to send Sakulis back to the UK to face justice, and was offered an urgent invitation by the White House to go there and to meet with the president, which they accepted. Unfortunately, it turns out that he had arranged some sort of like Maury Povich style like ambush interview on them. It sounds absurd, but Trump, it seems, thought he could convince the Dunns to meet the woman who killed their son and would do so by opening a side door through which she would walk. So she was hiding in a room next to where they were, and he was going to open a door and suddenly the woman who killed their son would be there. The whole scene would then be captured by a pool of photographers who had been summoned for the meeting. Again, a meeting that they did not consent to, that they didn't know about, and obviously had no interest in right then. I mean, this is horrendous, but I guess bizarrely not surprising considering this is a guy who comes from reality TV and has no empathy whatsoever for other human pain.
Yeah.
So he sees their situation and thinks, I can make a cool photo shoot out of this.
I can benefit from this, I can get praise from this. This comes back to him, I guarantee you. Because then as soon as, okay, what is it about logistically? The parents of this guy who was killed, seeing the woman who did it, who's run, the reason they're even in the country is to garner support to bring her back to face the consequences. What mindset do you think they're under that they want to see this woman's face walk out in a surprise moment
Not
with
at all.
photographers all around them. Like, oh, this is great. It's a good photo opportunity for us to look like we actually want to say something to this woman outside of take your ass back over to the UK so we can take care of this situation.
Yeah, I mean, to think that that is how they would respond, that they would respond positively, you have to have no understanding of how actual humans work and no empathy. Again, no empathy whatsoever for them. But the weird thing is, in the article of the interview of the family, I believe it was the mother of Harry Dunn who said, I actually felt like I was being comforted by Donald Trump. I mean, look, I despise Donald Trump, so I find that hard to believe. But she says he actually was being comforting before he decided to try to spring his trap. And he decided to ruin it. And bear in mind, the last time he commented on this incident was when he said, they drive on the opposite side of the road. Sometimes it happens, you drive on the wrong side. I won't say it happened to me, but it's happened to me. Sometimes you drive on the wrong side. So he was already apologizing for this woman who, whether it's the right or the wrong side of the road, don't run into a motorcycle. It doesn't, like if he had been on the wrong side of the road, don't hit him with your car. That does not seem like too much to ask. But that happened. And since then, he was able to muster a little bit of fake compassion for her, but apparently just as bait to trap her into a situation she had no interest in.
This is how he handles situations. Hey, by the way, there's New Yorkers who don't drive. And when they come to LA, apparently LA is an intimidating place to drive, I've heard. So they come to LA and they're like, I'm not driving anywhere. I was like, yeah, just rent a car and you'll get around faster. And they're like, I'm too afraid to drive here. And this is on the same side of the road that they drive across our country. So if you can't drive on the opposite side of the road in another country, don't drive.
Yeah.
I've been in London.
Careful.
I took taxis and everything all around London, and I was watching and I was like, I could never drive here. I would make a mistake. Easily, it's too easy to. So, and then after you do make that mistake because you didn't plan ahead, hey, you're gonna have to face those consequences. For some reason, we're continuing to teach, hey, you're an American. You don't have to face consequences. Everyone else's law doesn't mean anything. Our law and order only means something for the people we want it to mean something for.
Yeah, and by the way, look, I'm sure if you're that individual or their family, you probably think, this is just a horrible situation. I wasn't comfortable driving on there. I didn't mean to take this person's life, and that is 100% true, but you did. And so you have to face the consequences for that. She didn't run him down purposefully. It wasn't premeditated murder. She's not gonna go to jail for the rest of her life. And it's the UK prison system, not our system. So it's at least relatively empathetic towards regular people. But just because you're the wife of a diplomat doesn't mean you get to avoid any consequences whatsoever. There's nothing about him being a diplomat that means that you don't face any sort of moral responsibility for your, at the very least, carelessness and lack of attentiveness to the differing traffic laws of that country.
It went from an accident to purposeful pain. It's accidental pain to purpose pain. You don't care. Now you're purposely doing something to skirt that. Now you become a bad guy.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you so much. Obviously, some of the news has been very good today. Some has been incredibly dark, but we appreciate you sticking around for the full show and for the overtime. We really do appreciate that. Tomorrow, got a big show planned, and Brett's gonna join us on Friday as well. So stay tuned throughout the week. We'll see you tomorrow morning. Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Damage Report. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, John Adarola. I'll see you soon.